How is everyone? Good. Doing well, thank you. So, we want to welcome everyone to the March Homelessness Planning Council meeting, and we will get started. And just want to thank everyone for your continued efforts as we work towards ending homelessness. We are transitioning, as we know, into a new season of spring, and so hopefully we will also keep that same spirit as we transition as a community and continue to transition. We know that that has come with ups and downs, and so just being mindful that we are wanting to move forward, making sure that we are trying to accomplish our goals as best as possible, and remembering our purpose and staying centered around that. And so, with that being said, I just want to move forward with the attendance. And we understand some people are on the way, but I do want to be respectful of those of us time because we know people have lots of things to do. Stephen Handy, Ryan Lampa, Deirdre Childress, Alex Smith, Beth Shin. Thank you. Catherine knows. We need to remember. I need to just remember something about that. Deanna Allen Robb. I am present, no conflicts. Kanitha Patterson. Amber Ellis. Sheila Decker. Councilwoman Toombs. Councilwoman Evans. Councilwoman Sepulveda. Will Conley. Waddell Wright. Laura Ferguson Mims. Vicky Batcher. Wendell Seagroves. Jeff Gibson. Charles Strobel. Tom Turner. Okay, staff. I know that I don't see Renee, Treva, or Ginger. Is that correct?
Treva is filling in for Emel Alexander, our division director, who
Oh, well, congratulations to him. And then we have Susie, April. Okay, thank you all for that. All right, at this time, we will take a moment to have our remembrance and moment of silence for those who have lost lives. We have some from February, all are from February. And so I will read those names and afterwards we will observe a moment. Jacob, I can't see you all, I'm sorry. Jacob Alvarez, William Thrift, Richard Weller, Tony Blake, Ricky Lewis, Bronson Hunter, Mark York, Harold Wright, and David Kelly. And at this moment, if we'll just take a time to remember those lives. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, before you all, you should have the February 2023 HPC meeting minutes. If you could take a moment to review those, and if there are any noted corrections, just a reminder today that as you all are being recognized by the chair and making comments, we are asking that you utilize your microphone because we are recording the meeting, and therefore we can pick up your voice and it can be heard. I'll give you a moment to review them. And then again, if any noted corrections, let me know. Any noted corrections? Hearing none, we will move forward. And we will move forward with April and the interim director report for Metro Homeless Impact Division.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a little stuffy, so I'm going to keep it short as possible so that I won't have to cough or bore you with my snuffles. Or sniffles. Um, just a couple of updates for Metro Homeless Impact Division. I know that I reported last month. Just want to always remind everyone that we are working towards developing the Office of Homeless Services, and that will be in place July 1 for fiscal year 23-24. Also, we're in the process of identifying key positions, like HR and admin roles that are needed in order to stand up a department like that. Renee's been instrumental in helping provide that guidance. Also, there's a couple of more openings with Metro Homeless Impact Division. We have some street outreach positions and landlord engagement positions. You probably have seen those posted on metronashville.gov site. Funding updates. The mayor's 50 million. There was a presentation that was presented to Metro Council last month that you all should have received in your email package. Not sure if it was printed, but it is. Yeah. So that's just an update on where we are so far. We're in the process of developing a dashboard that will be a dashboard ticker that will be on our digital platforms for everyone to watch as well. The $9 million support services, we're going to be in application negotiations this Thursday, so more to come on that shortly. And MDHA's timeline for the 25 million, I think their board is going to meet on Thursday as well. So by the end of this week, there should be some announcements early part of next week. And cold weather shelter RFP was extended until late March. Several providers wrote in and asked for an extension. They were interested in applying but could not meet the short deadlines. Right now, we are in the process of the strategic plan refresh. We met last Saturday. I'm not sure if Jeff's here today. We have another meeting coming up, I believe, early part of April. Couple of other really strategic things that we're working on. HUD TA, we received some HUD TA guidance, and they had 4 large initiatives that I just want you all to know that some of our work is driven by that, like developing an outdoor housing strategy to downsize some of our encampments, downsizing some of our committees, and then governance and bylaws, and then also the unified leadership with the collaborative applicant combining with the lead entity on homelessness. There was a national leader named Steve Berg that came to town mid February. And he spoke at our COC. We have another COC meeting coming up that will give more details about that collaborative applicant conversation. A little bit more about cold weather shelter. I was giving reports monthly on cold weather shelter, and it looked like we were going to far exceed the number of days that we provided cold weather shelter this year versus last year based on that 32-degree change from 28 degrees to 32 degrees. And today I'm here to report that we are 1 day away. So last year we served 38 nights, and this year we served 37 nights. So kind of balanced out. Let's see if there's anything else. Couple of other things as far as, the encampment work that's going on. Several of you all may be aware that the posting for Caldwell Wentworth Soccer Field went out late February. The date for closure is March 15th. We've already started moving 5 people out at a time successfulully into either interim gap housing or other housing options of their choice. That's readily available for them if available for them. So that's going pretty smooth, and I believe Speaking of housing cultivation, I think during our strategic plan session, we talked a little bit more about how do we start fishing upstream instead of catching what's coming down. I meet with Angie Hubbard quite regularly, at least twice a month, and looking to go back to having weekly calls with her on some of her housing creation options. Also, Shangri-La, we've talked about them for about a year. Just want you all to know that they're still working on providing services here in Nashville. They're working through some zoning, I think, in the Antioch-Donaldson area. And we met with another provider that's looking to do some hotel conversions into SROs with kitchenettes, looking to bring pretty close to 120 units on as well. So the 91-bed unit for Metro Support Services, it's still underway and should be finalized by end of this year, hopefully. I believe that's it for me and my updates. Thank you.
Beth?
Couple of things. One, just want to acknowledge that you've been opening up the cold weather shelter, thinking about shelter for more than just cold weather. And rain and wind and potential flooding is equally dangerous to our friends, so appreciate that. I noticed in the interim housing report that nearly 7/8 of the people being placed in interim housing are white. And I just, that's not our population. And so I wanted to highlight that and try to make sure that we are thinking about racial equity in everything we do.
Thank you. And I will say, I know that this is at least the second time that that has been noticed. So I guess at some point from the data committee, we would need an update on what's being done to really drive that and how we can get that done. So maybe if this is March, by at least maybe the May HPC meeting, we can get a report in terms of what the racial equity looks like and what are some efforts around coordinated entry to address that. And if that could be noted in the minutes, Allison, that would be wonderful. Any other questions for Ms. Calvin? All right, thank you. Next is Susie with the collaborative applicant report.
Good morning. Under the continuum of care sort of specific stuff there, the regular competition awards have not yet been announced. Maybe some of you guys have heard rumblings, but at this point we don't have any information about the awards. That was last year's competition. This year's competition sort of basically starts with what's called the registration process. The deadline for that registration for Nashville was last Thursday, I think the 2nd of March, and I registered the community, I don't know, maybe a week and a half before that. So it's just it is a formality. It's very minor, but it does get our geography on the list, and Nashville's registered. We didn't go after a high-performing community status because that's a very arduous process that no community has ever been granted. And so the real clock doesn't start ticking in my mind on the competition until this NOFO gets published. No idea when that's going to be coming out. The general membership meeting is next Thursday on the 16th. At the last meeting that you guys might have attended, there was interest in furthering the conversation about the local collaborative applicant selection process, or the designation. And so the decision was that instead of a 1-hour meeting that would start at 10:30 typically, it will be a 2-hour meeting from 10:30 to 12:30, and that will be at the National Rescue Mission. Let's see what else we got here. The membership committee was due to meet this afternoon, but poor Grant Winter, who is the chair, not only has the flu, but he has COVID as well. So that's canceled in case anybody was planning on coming. The equity committee is looking to recruit additional members. If you all are interested in looking into equity and diversity as it pertains to housing and services for homeless folks, they would love to expand the membership. So please let me know if you're interested in serving, and I'll submit your name and information to Bobby, who is the chair of that committee. Let's see, Jeffrey Jackson from our Performance Evaluation Committee is going to be speaking instead of Carrie Dietz at 9 to go over the corrective action issues that the PEC has been looking into for a number of the agencies that get COC funding. Carrie was called into arbitration this morning, so he is going to be coming in her stead. So we'll hear from him around 9, assuming he gets here. He would just ask me what the address was. So I do plan on getting some information to you all about public funding for homelessness. If you attended the orientation for planning council members was it in the fall? I can't even remember when it was. October? Okay. Summer. Anyway, in the orientation, I made a big point when I was just presenting on what the continuum of care is, that the continuum of care funding is just a piece of the pie in terms of federal, local, and state government public funds. And don't even talk about private funds, but long ago and far away, I put together for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, when they used to do an annual hunger and homelessness survey, a spreadsheet of the funding that came into Nashville under those 3 public sources. And at least at that point, back in, I think it was 2007, the last time that we were asked for that by the conference, the COC funding represented 25% of all the public funds that came to the city. So it's important to just rest in having context, the continuum of care and the importance of the continuum of care. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's important for you all to rise above the continuum of care as a sole area of focus. And my intent is, we'll see if it happens, to refresh that chart and put new amounts, like most recent amounts, perhaps for federal year 2021 or 2022, and send that to you via email. I might send you the old stuff just to show you what we used to do, but of course it's so old that it really won't be accurate anymore. So hope to have a look at that information and that eagle-eye view of all the public sources. I don't think I could ever get into the private funding, but April suggested at the strategic refresh meeting this past weekend that we might be able to look at Giving Matters and, compile at least an estimate of that source of funding as well. But I think it's important for you all to understand sort of the sources of public funds, how much they are, what agencies administering them, that kind of stuff. I believe that's it for now. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Susie, on the private funding aspect of it, Focus Strategies did an assessment of our homelessness system back in 2015, 2016. And we requested some of that information from nonprofits. We actually asked about the amount of private funding for homelessness for quite a number of local nonprofits. And it was a question that, like you said, it hasn't really been asked a lot, so it kind of surprised some people, but we did get a lot of data back. So that could be a source for you as you put it all together. And thanks a lot for doing that.
That's great, Will. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, Deanna.
Good morning. I really don't need this, but I'll use it anyway. Just curious if kind of similarly with a dashboard of kind of the $50 million and how that's being used kind of ongoing, could we have something similar of a dashboard? I'm a very visual person. That's how I make sense of things. Is that something that we could maybe with the spreadsheet kind of have a dashboard of the breakdown of the funding, all the sources of funding that we're aware of? That's my question for Susie.
I think that would be really exciting. And I think I'd present it in an Excel spreadsheet, but you can make that into a bar chart pretty easily. And that kind of visual is more important to me. All the numbers and, in this hodgepodge it gets lost on me. But I can be working with, I know Hannah's working really hard on an HMIS dashboard. And we could, I think, integrating more data into that kind of a dashboard is really cool. Great idea.
Pastor Handy.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Susie, thank you for the data. I want to piggyback on this question around data points. Can we get a comparison? Because just having a dashboard for me is always inspiring, but it needs to be for me compared to something. So contextually, can you help us also think about the comparative piece of that?
Are you talking about compared to other cities or?
I think we need to be open-ended. So is there similar cities? Is there prior years? Absolutely.
Any other questions? Thanks for all of that. I think that would be great. And so we will work to get that information. And if nothing else, I know even if we get the websites where there is the actual funding of other COCs and perhaps can do some of those comparisons, I think would be helpful. So we will look into that and hopefully, if not, excuse me, because time moves so fast, y'all. Y'all know spring break. So I don't want to say for sure in April, but we will definitely get that to you all within the next couple of months. And if that can be noted in the notes, Allison has been great in terms of capturing these things. I make notes, but for some reason, I don't know what happens. But she's been great in rattling off what I need to remember to bring back before you all. So thank you all so much for your engaged conversation. Moving forward, Hannah with the HMIS monthly update.
Yeah, like, you want to come over here?
That's right.
I told Councilwoman Toombs just to come up here and work the mic. She don't want to do it.
Okay, hey everybody. Your regular monthly report is in there, but today I'm actually going to talk about this one, the 2022 System Performance Measures. This is a special report we do annually for HUD, and it is very important. HUD cares about it a great deal. They award us a lot of points on the NOFO and on the special NOFO for if we're improving on these system performance measures. So it's something that's really important for our community to know and work on improving and really focus on. So I'm just going to go through, these were due at the end of February. So these are our community system performance measures for the period of October 2021 through September 2022. The first one is average length of time persons remain homeless. For that, they look specifically at people who are in emergency shelters, safe havens, and transitional housing. So you can see that this year, on average, in emergency shelters and safe havens in Nashville, people were experiencing homelessness for 64 days. And when you add transitional housing to that, it was 91 days. And those were both an improvement on last year. And you can see the last several years, we've continued to shorten the number of days that people in shelters and transitional housing are experiencing homelessness, which is good. This is also only data that's in HMIS. We report it from HMIS, which is important to know. Measure 2 is about returns to homelessness. So we look at from people who exited homelessness to permanent housing 2 years ago, what percent of those people have returned to homelessness in HMIS at 3 different time points in less than 6 months from when they exited, from 6 to 12 months, and from 13 to 24 months. So there we can see in less than 6 months, it was 3%. 6 to 12 months, it was 4%, and 13 to 24 months, it was 5%. So those numbers, again, are very good for our community. That's one of the ones we always do very well on, and you can see that we've been improving year after year for the past several years as we've been decreasing the returns to homelessness. The third one on this first page is number of homeless persons. This looks at the point in time count, which is the left part of that graph. This is the 2022 point in time count because that's the reporting period we're talking about. And it was 1,916 last year. And then on the right is people who were in emergency shelters in HMIS. So that number was 1,605. And that is, whereas the point in time count is one single night, how many people were experiencing homelessness? This is over an annual, the entire reporting period, how many unduplicated people were in shelters in HMIS. So over a year, that was 1,605. That number has been increasing. And part of that is because we have a lot better emergency shelter coverage in HMIS as we've gotten places like Room in the Inn on board, so that we have more accurate data here. I'm going to flip it over to talk about the last three. Measure 4 is specifically about income growth for people experiencing homelessness in COC funded projects. So this is not all programs, just those with COC funds. This year, for people who were still in the program, 35% had increased their income. This could be earned income from employment or disability income, any cash income sources that might be reported. And for people who left the program during the year, so exited, 33% had increased income. This was the most striking measure for me this year for our community because we really decreased, particularly on people exiting programs. A lot fewer people increase their income through that program. So I think that's something our community can focus on coming up in COC funded programs. How can we make sure people are leaving with income to sustain themselves? Measure 5 is people who become homeless for the first time. The way this is measured is if they had previously been in any programs in HMIS during the 2 previous years. So if they weren't, then they're considered homeless for the first time. This, again, you can see is increasing every year. We're looking at all types of projects for this. So we're looking at emergency shelters, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent housing. So again, while I do think that's probably increasing in our community, this is also a function of having a lot better data in HMIS and capturing a lot more of those programs and who's in them. Measure 6, we don't report on in this community because that is only for high-performing communities. And then the last one is Measure 7, successful placement in permanent housing. And they like to see improvement in the percent of people who are exiting programs to permanent housing. So here we have street outreach is the pink, and then in the blue is emergency shelters, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing combined. We can see that we have been increasing the percent of people in street outreach who are exiting to permanent housing. In 2019, it was only 25%, and this past year it was 52%, which is a huge increase and a huge improvement. At the same time, the people exiting emergency shelters, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing to permanent housing has decreased somewhat to 47%. So hopefully this is something we can keep in mind and committees can keep in mind as we're doing our work throughout the year. This is something HUD really wants to see us improve on. And last time we talked about the strategic plan and quarterly reporting for that plan. And part of that was reporting on several of these measures regularly throughout the year so that we keep them at the top of our mind. Does anyone have any questions about them? Click Steve Glover. Click Steve Glover.
We're waiting to get mics and then we'll go to Dr. Shin.
Front left. We got it.
Got it? All right. So the elephant in the middle of the room is the HMIS coverage. And I think it's probably worth speculating about what will happen when the mission, I'm going to say when the mission comes in. I don't know what that's going to do about increases in income. It's going to increase the people who are first-time homeless. It's going to increase returns to homelessness within 2 years. It's going to increase the total number of homeless persons. And I'm sure we contextualize that in our reports to HUD. But just as you've said, that, you know, it's not just improvements in data quality, it's greater coverage of programs that is leading to. So thinking of them as just, you know, changes in some steady state isn't really quite the right way to think about it.
Yes, definitely when we have more data, specifically from the Nashville Rescue Mission, a lot of these are going to look worse, but we're going to know that that's a lot closer to the truth of what we're seeing in our community, and then we can really make improvements that are more meaningful in the data. He's in front, Larry Hager. Far left.
Give him 1 second to get your mic on, Vicki.
There you go.
I have more of a comment that the measure 2 is just troubling to see that people go back into homelessness. And again, I think we should be able to tell why they're going back into homelessness, how they're going back into homelessness, and how we can fix that so that this isn't even a situation anymore. And I'd like to see more data as far as how, why they went back. And
I can look at what we collect in HMIS and see what might be helpful.
Deanna, just make sure you're speaking into the mic.
So, thank you for this performance measures report. It is extremely helpful, and we do understand anytime you're collecting more information, your measures are going to change. But this brings me back to kind of our previous conversation about the dashboard and looking at, I think, comparison information. So what's coming up for me is some type of visual. I have no idea what it will be, but some type of visual that helps us understand kind of how the current funding is operating and serving current individuals versus what the actual need is. So if we're seeing this because we have a greater coverage of reportable information and it's going to make it look like, to your point, it's probably a more accurate understanding of how many of our neighbors are experiencing homelessness at any given time. How much more resources do we need to make sure that we have that every single person then is no longer experiencing homelessness? And to Vicki, your point about understanding more about what's happening with people returning to homelessness, this is just a comment. I do think, Hannah, your point of pointing out individuals exiting programs without an increased income is there was just kind of a likely connection for me. So if we're maybe starting looking at data, since we know that's already an issue, an area of improvement, what else can we glean from HMIS about the individuals that are returning to homelessness in the 2-year period when we know 1/3 of individuals are already leaving programs without an increase in income?
Anyone else? So what I'm hearing is better understanding of what are the gaps in services and funding. Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you so much, Hannah and team, for your hard work and continued improvements. I'm sorry, Kanitha.
I would say to add to that list that you just kind of summarized lived experience, because the aftermath of receiving services, I feel like it's not reflected here. So I'd say that's something huge to speak on, like what really happens when I exit a program. Because I don't feel like it's really a handle on that just by living it. But that would be the only addition I'd say.
Okay, and I think that will be great to note as well, because along with the 50 million is the supportive services, which we have acknowledged as a community is not as strong. So now that RFPs have been out, agencies are doing that. It would be interesting to see what that looks like. So I'm sure that will also be a part of what will continue to be tracked, but it will be noted. So gaps of services, funding, and outcomes of supportive services. Anything else? Perfect.
You want to stay up there?
Okay. We're going to give them a moment to switch seats, and we appreciate Hannah working on these mics. We will not have the MHEAD director position update. Director Pratt was unable to be here, so I do apologize for that. And hopefully by next month, we will have good news in terms of who that person will be. Well, is anyone here with the mayor's? You have her report? So what I'm gonna need? Okay, and I don't see a mic back there. If you could come to one of the mics. So if you'll go to the public mic, and then she can get on she can turn it on for you. And I guess if there's not, I think she said she is there for questions. If you all have questions for her, or if there are any known updates that you have for us, Karen, feel free to share.
Okay, can you guys hear? Okay.
Raise it up just a little bit so we can hear you a little more clearly. There you go.
Usual, I'm usually so short, that's not an issue. But so Ginger's not able to be here this morning. I think she's not feeling well. I don't have her report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. I know what I know about that a number of us have been working on. The most urgently has been looking at the Caldwell soccer field. As April said earlier, that notice was posted actually in late January rather than late February. It's late January. And then the 15th is when that will be closed. We do have, and I see Stacy just joined us too. She may have some more to add to this. But we do have folks that are being moved out this week that Stacy and Ben have been working with. And then we had a successful cleanup on this past Saturday, led by Shower the People and Open Table Nashville, and then with some support from the mayor's office. So if you guys have questions, then I feel like Stacey or I can probably answer them. Hope. Councilmember?
Thank you. I guess I wanted to just put it out there because I've been spending some more time with April and her team and in an encampment that's adjacent to my district. And I think one of the things that probably is missing, that's a frustration for residents, and then also I would say council members that are navigating the conversations around encampments, is really how we're going to scale the process. Because in working with April, I think the process is really a good one. It's very cumbersome, as we know, because it's very intensive. And it's been challenging for me, and I would say Councilman Hager, who's not here, but who's also actively involved in this process in our community, is how to communicate about that to residents. Because there are impacts, of course. The one in particular that I've been working on is right next to a school bus stop.
Right.
So those are the things I'd like to hear more of, that I'd like for, Ginger and the mayor's office to be driving in these last months of this administration, because I know that April's team can't do it on their own. And I'm concerned really about the ability to, as we talk about, as April shared about the open positions, how we can really focus on increasing that staffing. Because as I've been out with her team, it's the same people doing all the work in the entire county for Metro. And we've really allowed, or we're so behind because we've really relied on all the nonprofit organizations to do the heavy lifting. And we have not been the leaders on that front. So I guess I'm putting all that out there on, into the public. And I know you've heard it behind the scenes and in public as well, but that's my current experience. And so I would just love to see that be, as the hallmark of the end of the administration is to be this, really be targeted and amplified, I think, in the community would be helpful. And thank you.
Those are all good, excellent points. I know that we are, the logistics process for each encampment has gotten a lot more streamlined. And I think as we continue to work with MHED on how folks are, how they're identified, how they're housed, the prioritization plan is all extremely helpful, talking about how do we make decisions about what those next camps are, and then also how do we communicate that to the public and when, so that we don't have folks pick up and move over to that camp trying to see if they can get in, primarily because it's not fair to them, because if they make that change and they're not on their by name list at the time it was announced, then it's just, it's too early. April, what other thoughts do you have?
A couple of other thoughts for me. Karen hit on the prioritization team. There is a team that was drafted in that outdoor encampment strategy that's going to go back out and continue to assess the next 3 to 4 locations as well. And it's a really nice tool that's wrapped inside of that encampment strategy. Also, other things that we're looking to do outside of an encampment strategy would be more resource events, targeted resource events, and then targeted camp cleanups as well, so that it's something really visual that the community can see an effort that's being poured into that location. Coordinated entry for people that are outside of the encampments that we are focusing on continues. So other nonprofits and our HMIS and coordinated entry team are continuing to put people in the system as well. So you'll see some in our numbers where people are getting housed from the encampments, from the shelters, and from normal coordinated entry process as well. One other thing that the mayor's office has been instrumental in the last couple of days or weeks maybe, is getting other metro departments actively involved in this issue. So NDOT, they're coming to the table in a huge way to help with camp cleanups that can't always fall on nonprofits or our small MHEAD team. When NDOT or parks, they have all the tools and equipment that's needed to accomplish something like that. We had a great conversation yesterday. I called it the 3 E's, whether we encourage, incentivize, or incentivize through encouragements, or educate and enforce. How do we help with bringing some of that from NDOT to the encampments, that way it won't be such a heavy lift on such a small department. And the mayor's office is fully in support of that and actually starting that conversation. So more to come, because I think that the more, one, housing is one, resources is the other, but also the neighborhood cleanup so that the people that are housed can see that there's work going on into that area as well.
Any other questions for Karen? All right, thank you, Karen. Next, under new business, we will move forward with our coordinated entry review by Sally Lott.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sally Lott. I'm the Coordinated Entry Manager at the Homeless Impact Division, and today I am bringing you updates to our Coordinated Entry Policies and Procedures Manual. The last time this manual was officially approved was in summer of 2020, so it is well time to have an updated manual. In terms of the process for these updates, updates are being presented to you here today. You all have it as a part of your packet. Thank you, Jaha. And they do go out for a 30-day public comment period. I'll also be reviewing them briefly at the beginning of the general membership COC meeting next week. After the 30-day public comment period, comments are reviewed, and then ideally, time-wise, it is brought back to this body in the April meeting for approval. So today it is a presentation. Other parts of this process, these updates were brought to a CE stakeholder group that I'll mention again, but this group consists of service providers, stakeholders, people with lived experience that are working on general prioritization update. These updates were brought to that group for review and discussion, and so now are being presented to you today. So that's kind of like the process of how the updates will work. I want to highlight some of the most substantial updates being made to the manual. Some of the updates were very wording based, like our quarterly housing navigator trainings are now our monthly CE resource and referral training. So there was like wording that needed to be updated to better reflect like what's happening in the community, care coordination, meeting schedules, etc. But I want to review the more substantial updates. The first one is on page 10. And it speaks to the larger work that's happening around updating our prioritization protocol. It's brief, I'm just going to read it. The VI SPDAT tools are known nationally. The VI SPDAT is our current assessment tool. The VI SPDAT tools are known nationally to have problems with racial bias in questions and scoring, do not focus on Nashville's specific needs, and are not administered uniformly by agencies. Due to these concerns, Nashville is committed to the discontinued use of the VI SPDAT as the CE assessment tool. The 2022 CE evaluation focused on Nashville's needs regarding assessment and prioritization. In August of 2022, a stakeholder group was formed to begin the work on updating the CE prioritization protocol. This group meets bi-weekly and will use information from the CE evaluation, as well as other community input and research in the prioritization update effort. It was important for me to have stated publicly that these long-term efforts are underway. I get a lot of questions about that. I've been encouraged by HUD, by other peer communities, that this is long and difficult work. It's work that can't be rushed. So that group continues to meet diligently to really focus on Nashville's needs. So wanted that to be stated in our manual. So that's kind of a general update. I can, after this, speak more to that process if anyone has questions. The other more substantial update is on page 12 regarding incorporating the temporary updates that were made in the summer of 2022. So we had temporary updates to the manual July of 2022 that have been in effect. One was expanding the priority 1 family categories for referrals. These categories are based on shelter gaps in our community. And then the other is around encampment prioritization. And these are on page 12. And again, these temporary updates were also brought to this body in July, but are now just being officially incorporated in the manual. Does anyone have any initial questions? I think I saw Tom, then Kenitha.
Kenitha, and then Tom.
I just have a question about the VSBAT score. What replaced that? Or
So
what's going to be in place instead of that?
That is actually what we're working on, is what is going to replace the VI-SPDAT. Part of what makes the work difficult is that HUD has not given any guidance. They don't recommend any new particular tool. And so what the work has to include is not creating another tool that replicates the same inequities that the VI-SPDAT does, which is part of what makes the work so complicated. So what the CE stakeholder group is working on, and based off of the community input we received, is, okay, this is what we are seeing as vulnerabilities in Nashville. This is what we need to prioritize. How do we assess for that, and what does that tool look like?
Was that it, Kenitha?
All right, thanks.
Like to figure out how to communicate with that group, if
Sure.
that makes sense. Is that a transparent process of
Yes, I can,
being able to get them data?
I can definitely talk to you about that after, for sure. I convene those, so for sure.
Thanks, Sally. On the VI-SPDAT, that's the tool we have now.
Yes.
And so that's where we are. HUD's offered no general guidance. Are there other cities that have done what you're doing now that you're able to use as a model?
There
Okay.
are several cities that are using an updated tool. There are many more cities that are exactly in the place we are in terms of where do we go from here. I was actually recently on a HUD feedback listening session. There were lots of communities from across the country. Many were in the exact same place Nashville is, and that we are working to update. Part of what the CE stakeholder group has done is we have taken deep dives into what communities that have, you see a variety of things. You see some communities that have an entire new tool. You see others that have added supplemental questions to the VI-SPDAT. And so we have taken close looks at those and are deep diving into how they're assessing for things. Communities like Seattle, Austin, Charlotte, Houston. Those are some just off the top of my head that we've really deep dived into what they're doing. Mm-hmm.
So I'm beating a dead horse here, but the prioritization of encampments is a prioritization of white people, which we see in the interim housing gap. I'd really like to encourage the committee to think about how to rectify that in its replacement of the VI-SPDAT.
Sure. I think that is something that a lot of communities are looking at, because I think a lot of communities, Nashville included, see the specific vulnerabilities that come with being unsheltered, but also see kind of the racial component of that, and so kind of working through that. Yes.
I guess I would like to see this prioritization of encampment. I'd like to see the process of how you prioritize that. Or is it because of what the news reports are on TV?
So that is actually kind of what April spoke to. It came out of the shelter committee, the encampment prioritization tool. It's a tool that looks at a variety of aspects of an encampment. It did, again, come out of, it was a community-led decision to implement the tool. It came out of the shelter committee. I would say it can be shared, yeah. And so, yes, it goes into different things like of what can make a particular encampment vulnerable. And yeah, April can share with the group. Absolutely.
We'll get that out. I see Alex and then Pastor Handy.
Is there any chance that whatever program that we pick, specifically for Nashville, on and improving or changing the VS for that HUD will reject it?
I think that would be highly unlikely. I don't think there's a process by which HUD rejects prioritization tools. They also don't offer a recommendation on a tool, and very intentionally, like HUD says, we want it to be a community-led decision, and what your community decides is what needs to be implemented. So they have very specific wording that it needs to be community-based and that they're not going to impose a tool on a community.
Well, I completely understand that, but
Yeah.
there's still a chance that they can reject whatever we bring to the forefront too. I mean, not as rejecting as saying, no, you cannot use it, but they can be like, hey, some of this is not really working for us. Can we change some of the wording around and stuff like that? That's what I'm asking. Is there a change for them?
Sorry.
Is there a way for them to be like, okay, since you brought this to us, cool, we can use this for Nashville, but this is only for Nashville. It's not a state thing.
Initially, I'll just say any tool, what we do end up implementing will be closely monitored and reviewed, and can be edited and updated in the future. That's something that HUD really encourages. CE needs to be nimble as well as how we're assessing. So if whatever is implemented and we're looking and it's not addressing disparities or something like that, we can go in and bring that back to the stakeholder group, bring that back to the community, update as needed. I will also say, for our new prioritization protocol to be implemented, it will have to again be presented to the COC general membership. It will have to be approved by this body. And so with all of that community support implementation, I think it'd be highly unlikely that we would receive that type of feedback from HUD. That's just my initial thought.
Okay.
Is there currently a model where nonprofits, faith communities, and governmental agencies work together to resolve this whole idea around encampments? And if there isn't, could we explore the possibilities of what that could look like?
I would say Houston, the model that we are utilizing to draft our model, they did that. And in the policy, there's a lot of language where you see where the government, the nonprofit, and I think where we should be a little bit stronger is faith-based industry, bringing more of the faith-based industry into a lot of the work that we do. We have not been so intentional in previous years, but I think that that's one area that we could work on. But almost all of the other communities that you always hear us talk about, Austin, Houston, Milwaukee, are utilizing a model like we're using.
She's just saying, because
She said the USICH also has guidance regarding that. Let's see, United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. I feel pretty good about that.
Health Department of Justice, there's a representative of the major areas of government.
So thank you all. These are
Thank you
things
for
that
these
we're
questions.
talking about. I'm sorry, I just cut. We got to move. I'm sorry, Sally. Were you finished?
I was saying thank you too.
Okay, sorry. But I think that this is great conversation. And so, as we are thinking, and as you all are connected to different faith based communities, one of the things I say, we are our greatest advocates. So, hopefully, within your faith based settings, you're letting folks know about the landlord engagement program. You're letting people know how to get involved in this cause and what can be done. Because what we have seen is that that has been some of the greatest change. I do know with Houston, I've had the chance to visit that site. And what's phenomenal is, and you'll understand this, and I'm sure you already knew this, Pastor Haney, but Rudy Rasmus, who's a dynamic power social justice grassroots organizer there, and has worked with Beyonce Knowles and her family, and they have done tremendous work around building affordable housing, creating coordinated entry, working with the city. And so if you ever are in Houston, I just encourage you all to go visit that site. It's a phenomenal thing to see, and to see how this can really work. And I know oftentimes we get so discouraged about the things that aren't working, but this is an example of folks with lived experience, faith community, private donations, as well as the city government and how they have worked to really improve the situation. So just wanted to give that thought as well. Moving forward to the Performance Evaluation Committee, I know that Susie let us know that Carrie was unable to be here, and I apologize. I forgot who you said was coming, and I see him, but
Yeah,
I'm drawing-
Jeffrey Jackson is here, a member
Jeffrey
of the
Jackson,
Performance
thank you
Evaluation
so
Committee.
much.
Thanks for coming, Jeffrey.
Yes, so I'm Jeffrey Jackson with the Performance Evaluation Committee, just to give you a brief update on what we've been working on. Top of the list that we've kind of been working on is just taking feedback from the agencies on the application process and improving the application process insofar as making it easier for renewal apps to get through without backlogging their system, and helping newer applicants possibly find resources to determine, how they can best put together an application. So those are some things we've been working on. The monitoring visits, I'm not sure how long ago they were at this point, but they did result in some deficiencies across some of the agencies. Most agencies have put in place a corrective action plan and have fixed most of those deficiencies. UHS still is struggling to meet some of those. They're a little short on the bed count from what we can tell. They're of the beds that they used to apply for. It's 130 something. I think they're currently using about 67 or so with COC funding here. So we've requested drawdown information from them.
I just wanted to, the acronym, it's Urban Housing Solutions, just so you know. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you. So we've requested some drawdown information from them to kind of see how the funds are actually being used. And in conjunction with that, but not necessarily directly related, we are reevaluating our reallocation process to possibly implement a reallocation process going forward, to where if the need does arise for one of the agencies to reallocate funds, we have a process for that. Currently, we really don't have anything that we can stand on, so we need to put that in place and have it in place before the next applications go live, so that it can be out there for everyone. Outside of that, those really are the two large things, just kind of focusing on the reallocation process and streamlining the application procedure for this next round of funding. So, if there are any questions, I'd happy to field those.
Any questions? They will come back with a more detailed report. We just kind of wanted to update you all as to where they are. But do you have something, Deanna? No? Okay.
I just wanted to add that the Performance Evaluation Committee meets each month, and their next meeting is next Wednesday, the 15th at 4 o'clock at MDHA in our boardroom. Public's invited. Often we have 2 or 3 members of the public, but not a great show. And if you'd like to be there, Brent Elrod, who's the now Executive Director of Urban Housing Solutions, is going to commit to be there. And this will be one of the agenda items at the meeting. Thank you.
Kanitha. What time was that meeting?
4 o'clock.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Okay, so moving forward in our agenda at board matters and committee updates, we are at the HPC audit follow-up. And our vice chair, Laura Ferguson Sims, is unable to be here, but she has sent in a report. So what I'll do is just read directly what she has emailed to me, or to me in April. And it says, Dear HPC members, I am disappointed I am not able to attend the meeting today due to testing positive for COVID. However, I wanted to ensure the HPC received an update regarding the HPC review of resignations ad hoc committee. If the individuals do not object, I request the following individuals serve on the aforementioned ad hoc committee. Stephen Handy, Deanna Allen Robb, and she's asking that you chair this, and then Tom Turner. And just to summarize what we talked about at the last board meeting, there was a motion on the floor, which did pass, is that an ad hoc committee be formed to look into the previous resignation of board members from the Homelessness Planning Council. And so the next step to be decided was to form the committee, which per our charter is short-termed, and it is just for this specific purpose. And the vice chair is the person who's overseeing this committee and will work with the committee in terms of giving them sort of the direction and the understanding of what the committee was formed for, was of course to review the letters from HPC members. They have resigned. We're looking at a 24-month period, and then also just seeing what those trends are, and then possibly even recommending a tool or exit interview process for individuals resigning from the HPC that would allow us to understand the data better about what is going on, what's helpful, what may not be. And so this information would be shared. And so the next step that I would need is an agreement of those committee members that our vice chair has selected, if you're willing to serve on this ad hoc committee for the brief amount of time that it would take. And I wouldn't suspect it would be a long time for you all to have to meet. So I'll start with you, Pastor Handy. Is it a yes? Deanna Allen Robb.
Asked to the dance on the day of the dance. I'll say yes.
Okay. And Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you all. I know you were put on the spot for sure, but I appreciate you all following up with this. And so our vice chair will be in contact with you, and then you all will move forward and then come back with the report. And so any questions related to this, I really probably can't answer them because I'm just reading the report for the vice chair. But I'm happy to take your questions and refer them to her. All right, hearing none, we'll move forward in the agenda. And Ms. Decker, Consumer Advocacy Board, public comment.
Morning. We did not receive any public comments related to Homeless Planning Council agenda items. We did receive one public comment relating to an encampment. That comment was forwarded to Metro Homeless Impact Division for follow-up. The end.
Thank you so much. Moving forward, we will have a story of progress from Park Center. I see Will very excitingly tapping his mic, so I guess it's going to him.
Hey, fortunately for you all, someone else is going to report out. I am lucky enough to co-lead Park Center with Zach Sanders, who leads our permanent supportive housing program. So thanks, Zach, for being here.
Hey, hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to just take this in my hand because it's easier. I just wanted to share a brief story with you guys, something that inspires some hope. Actually, I have two stories. Will doesn't know about number two. One is about a woman who is living with us, and I'm going to tell you where she is, and I'm going to tell you where she came from. She is currently in a unit. She is on a 1.5-year lease. Reason for that kind of odd leasing term is that she moved into that unit with a goal of exiting our supportive services. So at the end of that 1.5 years, she's at about a year right now. We're about to start a housing search. She's going to exit that housing with a Section 8 voucher and be able to move anywhere in our community and join the rest of us living without supportive services in a day-to-day life. And that's really exciting because when I tell you where she came to us from street homelessness as a referral from, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. She came to us as a street referral from End Slavery, Tennessee, had exited sex trafficking, and was newly sober, came to us, still had track marks on her arm, but excited. She moved into a housing situation with a housemate, lived there for about a year. After a year, she got a job. Not only did she get a job working in recovery. Since then, she's been working at Cumberland Heights. She has got a promotion there, moving up in that company. She's very excited, very involved in her recovery community. And at that year mark after she got that job, we started developing a program to allow people to exit, because for so long, our housing, we operate a permanent supportive housing program, but it doesn't have to be permanent for everyone. Not everyone needs services for the rest of their life. They need some time to figure out their lives and figure out what they want to do with themselves. And this woman was able to do that through the supportive services she received. And now in 6 months, our goal is that she's not going to be with us anymore. She's going to join an alumni group where she still has access to us if she needs to, because sometimes that Section 8 recertification isn't fun. But after that, she's going to be on her own, doing her thing, stable, living a life, just like the rest of us. And that's really exciting. The other small thing I just wanted to share really quickly is that as of Friday, we got our building permit for one of 3 slated building projects to add units to the city. The first one's going to be 8 units with another 46 coming in the next year or so. So we're really excited about that, to be adding units to the city, because I think we all know it's a math problem. There are so many other problems, but so much of it's a math problem. And we're really excited for that.
All right, thank you so much for that. We like to always end on a story of progress. I think we know the work is hard. We definitely know, those of us who are on the ground doing the work, that every day it can be a lot. And so most importantly, we know for those that are actually living in these conditions, it's even harder. And so to remember what we are here for and to be reminded of what the work that is being done is just so helpful. So again, thank you all for your hard work and continued movement. Only other thing I want you all to make note of is the next meeting is April 12th. Remember, our time has moved to 8:30. So we are hopeful that we can begin at 8:30 in April. And then also please make note of the important dates that are noted on your agenda. If nothing else, Miss Ma'am, Kanitha.
So I have to say, I got to go to the National Alliance to End Homelessness Conference, and it was so good, to the fact the first day I had to go sit down somewhere because I was so overjoyed of the experience. So I did have to report that back to y'all. I'm going to do a broader report through my organization, but I had to say that was something that was so refreshing, and the things that I heard across the board was the lived experience. It was so amplified. That's why I had to go sit down somewhere, because it kind of feels like a trailblazing thing when you are lived experience, because nobody really knows what that all entails. But just being in that space with so many other people and service providers reconfirming that how important lived experience is, and how that's missing from the overall picture. Like he said, a math problem. That's the equation. The piece that's missing is the lived experience. So that was just phenomenal to be able to be the only one from Nashville, Tennessee in the room too. So just powerful experience. I just wanted to report that back.
Thank you. So I know that that was their unsheltered conference. They have another one in July. I know I plan to attend that one, and I think maybe some others. So these conferences are important. So thank you for that. And if at some point you want to do a story of progress, let us know. I will say we definitely are definitely in need of more people with lived experience, and we are aware of that and figuring out how to do that again in a human-centered approach. Oftentimes when people are coming out of the trauma of homelessness, you know, we want to be mindful of how we approach them about how they want to give back, just to give them their opportunity to heal. And so we are definitely looking at that. So we appreciate you all keeping that on the radar. And I think it's important that we looked at people who are having recent lived experience as well, because what we know is that people's shared experiences may not be the same, but we do know that those are important. So thank you again. If nothing else, we will adjourn our March meeting. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Evans.
That's okay. I appreciate the recognition. I wanted to just bring to the attention of the group that on December 15th of 2022, we passed BL 2022-1529 in the council, which is the legislation to increase the hotel taxes by 1%. There was an amendment included with that legislation, and that was to basically kind of get some information around folks living in hotels and like what is the scope of folks living in hotels that will be impacted by that tax increase, and is there opportunity to be able to, you know, provide any relief on that because of people not meeting those thresholds to not be taxed because they're not staying in one place, you know, for longer than 30 days. So we were supposed to have a report on March the 1st. And basically it kind of got a little lost. And so we're reconvening on that. And so I'd gotten some information via Kathy Jennings from different providers about folks that you may be putting up in hotels, or, you know, budgets that you may be spending towards that effort. And so I'm trying to kind of come back and get more information. So if any of you have information that you would like me to include as I aggregate that and share that with the administration, you can email it to me at aaron.evans@nashville.gov. And I appreciate your help. Thank you.
As they say in some settings, are all hearts and minds clear? Okay, if so, we will adjourn at 9:51. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.